The Secret Science at Work by Max Freedom Long. Chapter 12. The Telepathic Mutual Healing Group. An experiment based on the Huna theories of the Aka cord and telepathic messages sent thereon was launched among the members of the HRA who wished to participate. We called it the Telepathic Mutual Healing Group, which was alphabetized, as is the modern habit, to the TMHG in no time at all. Begun as an experiment to last and be reported upon for the period of only a month, the interest and the results kept it going for years. As has been said, the HRA was composed of people scattered here and there across this country, Canada, Europe, and Australia. Our only means of meeting was by letters and the bulletins. There were many who felt the need of contact with others working along the same lines, and there were many with urgent needs and whose confidence in the strength of their own prayers was weak. It is true that where one person can accomplish little working alone, a number of persons banded together for a common purpose can accomplish great things. There was no possibility of our getting together physically, as people do in a church or a lecture hall, but why not get together telepathically? We had been teaching our low selves to use that talent which belonged to them alone. Here was a chance for experimentation along that line, but on a larger scale. Here was a chance to help those who needed help if we could. For many years, there has been absent treatment practiced by modern religious organizations without the mention or the realization of the involvement of the telepathic element. There has always been prayer on behalf of friends and loved ones at a distance, and often organized prayer in which distant members of a larger group join at stated times. I looked into the records of Kahuna practices to see if there was a precedent or a guide that might help us in planning our course. The ideal combination for healing, of course, was the Kahuna and his patient. The Kahuna concentrated all his efforts on one person before turning to another. But I found a most interesting practice in the matter of braiding the Aka cords. That's in quotes, braiding the Aka cords, which suited our purposes exactly. As set forth in earlier chapters on training the low self and telepathy, we knew that the thought form messages travel on an Aka thread or cord projected by the low self and attached to the low self of the person to whom we are sending the message. We knew of the belief that high selves of a tribal unit or a group form the Po Amakawa, or great company of high selves. It is also believed that there was strength in union on high self level. The symbol for it was a rope, woven, twisted, or braided from many strands. A rope is much stronger than a thread, and the implication is that the Aka threads or cords of many people, leading to the many selves, if all animated for the sending of the mana and the thought forms of the same prayer at the same time, will enable the high selves to perform a mighty work of power in behalf of the community or assembly of low and middle selves joining in this form of prayer. In Polynesia, the temples were often large, raised stone-paved platforms, and on the platform were several houses of thatch, each dedicated to a special purpose. One such house was set aside for the good of the tribe as a whole. It was the house in which, after proper preliminary ritualistic cleaning of the people who had gathered to make up the congregation, the priests hid themselves from sight and perform the mysterious final rite of braiding together the fibers of coconut husk to form a strong rope. Once braided and symbolizing the uniting of the aka cords of all the congregation to provide the augmented strength and probably exhibited to the people, the prayer was considered made and sent to the high selves. In Japan, where things reminiscent of Huna have been retained in the older religions, the symbol may be found in the form of a strand of rope hung between two pillars before the temples. The rope is as thick as a man's body in the center, but tapers to little more than a single strand at each end, telling the lesson of strength and union in an enduring symbology. From this idea of the significance of the rope or braided cord, our plan of procedure was evolved. I proposed to officiate at the center of things and do my best to perform the rite of braiding and to direct the mana as it flowed in from all sides along the aka threads of the high selves. To the high selves, sorry. The participants in the HMHG were said to send in to me, along the aka threads connecting us, the mana and the thought forms. We know from our study of psychometry that an aka thread is attached to an object by the person handling it, and that later a psychometrist may touch the object and his low self follow the aka thread to the owner, learning things about the owner which can be verified. Therefore, we decided to use for our aka thread contact letters and signatures sent in to me by those taking part in the experiment. The letter was to state briefly the well thought out prayer from which they were not to deviate. It was to be signed in ink, and the signature gazed at steadily for half a minute with the sheet held in the hands, in this way making sure that the aka thread would be attached to the sheet and the signature. The letters were then sent to me, and I planned to place them in a box and lay the palms of my hands on the edges during the minutes when we were to observe the prayer rite together. Before the appointed hour, however, I could touch each letter and concentrate on it for a short time to try to make preliminary contact through my low self and the aka thread. We decided upon a set time daily for making our contact with each other and for the prayer action. As some HRAs could work only in the afternoon and others only in the evening, and as there was a difference between various parts of the world to be considered, we set the periods at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. California time, and it was left to the individual to calculate the time differences and to arrange their own periods of observation to coincide with California time. Instructions as to the procedure of the prayer action were sent out to those who were to join in the experiment. I append a condensed version of them, which will serve to show how we went about the tests. The TMHG prayer action ritual is roughly divided into steps as follows. Step number 1. You will have your thought forms of the desired conditions all made and ready to be recalled on a moment's notice. At a few minutes before the hour strikes, assume a proper mental attitude of earnestness and then accumulate a large surcharge of mana as you can. As the hour strikes, make a telepathic contact with your own high self and the high selves of the others by directing your attention to me at the center and holding the will to make a telepathic contact through me as center from which rises the braided cord or united aka thread to contact all the high selves and increase the power of the prayer action for all who participate. Send love and blessings and mana consciously to the high selves through me as center. Do this for 2 minutes, also asking and picturing world blessings and offering mana for the use of the high selves for their own purposes, whatever they may be. Step number 2. At approximately the end of 2 minutes, relax and let me send you my love and blessing and visualization of perfect conditions. I will also send a color as an aid in developing your telepathic receptivity. Do not worry if you do not get any impressions at all. It has been our experience that the benefits are not lacking in any way because reception is poor or entirely lacking. Step number 3. At about 4 minutes after the hour, set to work making your prayer action in the usual way by recalling and visualizing in vivid detail the conditions which you wish to have the high selves built into your future. Imagine yourself as stepping into the new conditions and doing all the things that you would or will do when they are materialized as realities, when the answer is completed by the high selves. At these times, it is good to picture others as also blessed and desirable conditions if your life is close to or dependent on theirs at any point. Let me read that last sentence again. At these times, it is good to picture others as also blessed with desirable conditions if your life is close to or dependent on theirs at any point. Step number 4. As the end of the 8 minutes draws near, endeavor to send and say that you are sending the thought forms of the desired conditions together with a strong flow of mana to the high selves by way of the center and the braided cord of connecting aka threads. That done, pause a few seconds and then send your prayer ceremonially with definiteness, saying, the prayer takes its flight. Let the rain of blessings fall. Open bracket. This is the return flow of mana made into high mana, which has the effect of vivifying and blessing us. Close bracket. Ah, ma, in brackets, or amen. The experiment was carried on faithfully for the entire month, with reports being sent in during the period and at the end of it. Here is the report again, condensed from the bulletin as it was made at the end of the test period. Report on the telepathic mutual healing experiment, November 25th to December 25th, 1948. The matter of time was one of the main obstacles. Often some of us had to cut and run from social gatherings or home engagements to join in the work. Some were unable many times to make it at all. A surprising number found that they seemed unable to remember the time and forgot it until later. In brackets, perhaps George was not interested. Close bracket. However, out of a large number who took part, about 50 or 60, only a very few members were unable to sit on most evenings. The object of the experiment was, 1, to see whether or not telepathic impressions could be sent out by me from Los Angeles Center to a number of associates at a time. 2, to see if the impressions could be picked up as sent or if they would be distorted and changed. 3, to see what effect working in this way as a group would have under Huna methods and beliefs in healing body or circumstances or in other unexpected ways. Sent telepathically, in brackets, by me for test purposes, close bracket, were the numbers from 1 to 10. Simple geometric figures such as triangles, squares, circles, stars, cones, pyramids, in brackets, solid instead of the simple outline of in a few instances, close bracket. The letter H, in brackets, for Huna, close bracket, and the color green. So long as sending one digit, one number between 1 and 10, one geometrically solid figure, the letter H, and the color green. Now back to the text. This color was varied from lightish yellow green to darker, brighter, and often light bluish green. There were also sent out the visualized picture of peaceful green valleys, fields, rolling green farmlands to embody the idea of world peace for which we all worked, in addition to the other desired things. On each Wednesday night, a well-organized and fairly long established group of about 15 persons, many trained in the use of suggestion for various purposes, in brackets, not originally a Huna group, but with all members by then HRAs, close bracket, joined me at the stroke of the hour and carried out the steps of the experiment. I continued to send out the telepathic image as usual to test the difference in reception as it might be at a distance and close by. In brackets, no difference was to be noted, close bracket. This group, working with me as a unit later in the evening, tried sending healing by telepathic means and invoking also the help of the high selves to various HRAs in distant places. This was to test the idea that several people working together as a group might be able to exert a greater force than a single individual. Checks by letter, in some cases without letting the patient know in advance of the time and plan, showed a marked benefit, especially in the matter of strength and restored feeling of well-being. In 2 cases, the ones so treated felt so well on the following days that they tired themselves and were soon back to the former state. Wasn't that interesting? They felt so well on the following days that they tired themselves and were soon back to the former state. Members of the group also experienced the strange feeling of uplift and exhilaration the next day. The problem of how to retain The problem of how to retain the effect longer or perhaps permanently seemed to be tied in with the question of the mana in some definite way. In each instance, the group had practiced accumulating a surcharge of mana to be used in a number of ways, experimentally as well as in healing tests. My personal feelings at the center were marked by the fact that they were very strong some nights and almost lacking on others. This has also been the experience of nearly all HRAs who have reported their feelings. The cause of this variation has not been determined. On nights when I felt little or nothing, the mental images sent out telepathically were picked up apparently just as well. On the first night, I took the stack of letters which had come in from far and wide and worked through them, noting the names on them and reaching out mentally to my friends, one after another, to establish contact telepathically through the aka threads attached to the letters and thus to them. As the hour grew near, I felt a strong undercurrent of excitement, as if sensing the attitude of expectancy of everyone waiting to begin. As the hour struck, I relaxed and waited for the thoughts and mana directed to me to be felt. My hands tingled on the letters And as I turned my mind to uniting all the threads and lifting them as one great braided cord to the great company of high selves, of which our own formed a part, there came a quite unexpected feeling of being suddenly uplifted and cleansed and blessed. I felt a rush of joy and love and a great desire to be allowed to help by doing my allotted part in the work of healing and restoration. The emotional reaction that marks the cooperation of the low self was suddenly very strong, and the joy of it brought tears to my eyes. Others reported this reaction on their part also. In this emotional condition, I sent back to my friends my love and the blessedness I sensed flowing to us from the high selves. There was a mystical feel to it all, such as I have sensed in realization under the Zen Buddhist system, and as I remember once sensing in a Baptist revival meeting years ago. The next step was that in which we all made clear before us the pictures of wanted conditions. I pictured the perfect conditions of health and happiness and prosperity for all, and the world blessed with peace and abundance. In the next minute, I presented my picture and felt the sharp tingle in my hands increase as our united mana and pictures flowed into the braided cord. At the end of the 4th minute, I closed the prayer actions in the usual way, relaxing while I tried to sense any return from the high selves. I sensed something dimly which seemed to fill me with a new strength and uplift and cleanse me anew. I soon went into my evening's telepathic healing work for individuals, much refreshed and with a greater feeling of faith and confidence. It was a very blessed experience, and one which, when felt by the others, has made us all eager to continue the work, even if many nights pass without such strongly felt rewards. Others reported a number of times the reception of the things sent out telepathically, just as I had sent them, with almost no changes or mistakes. But in a majority of the reports, there had been something added or changed. For instance, the triangle was seen sent on a green shield, which was bordered with gold. The circle was seen to begin to revolve and move and multiply. The green fields were augmented by trees with beautiful flowers, and rows in the fields were amazingly perfect and straight with green. For some of the green gave way to other colors, fountains and sweeps and rainbows of them. The solid pyramid and cone were both reported back. Simple stars became lighted and blazing, and at Christmas surmounted Christmas trees. The past played here by symbols let me start the sentence again. The part played here by symbols indicates that the low selves were hard at work with us. The low self is known to add to what it picks up psychically and to make symbols which, if we can get to the meaning hidden behind them, often reveal hidden things in the consciousness below the threshold. The occurrence of such symbols lets us know that there was a reality to the reception and that it was not a figment of the imagination. The healing results were excellent, and the work in the test month seemed to help bring to a head self-healing work begun earlier, and healing efforts in which I have worked with associates on their problems. Here are some comments gleaned from the letters. Quote, I feel its benefit long after the appointed time. End quote. Quote, best I have been in 4 years. I feel so very little and humble, somehow. Return thanks. End quote. Open quote. When you told us that my wife had been treated by the Wednesday night group of nearly 20, we checked back and recalled singularly, and not, as it may seem, that she was lying in bed that evening at just about that time. Out of the clear blue sky, she called to me in another room to tell me that she was suddenly feeling better, much better. She cannot describe just what came over her at that moment, but states that something seemed to calm her and give her a feeling of great strength, something that she had not at any time previously experienced. End quote. Quote, nothing yet. Close quote. Quote, I am feeling the benefit of the work and I am hoping it will carry through the whole picture. End quote. Quote, the first night I felt so relaxed that I fell asleep. I felt as if I were just floating into space. The next night I saw such pretty green fields. End quote. Quote, the first night I saw dimly a sliding door that was pushed aside, which I took to indicate that the way was open for us. Last night I was shown a ring with triangles set around the top, and then streamers coming down like a rope, as if they were intertwined. End quote. Quote, we 3 sit each night. Mother said that, night before last, she saw a big difference in her eyes. We certainly are grateful for that. End quote. Quote, the eyes improved steadily under telepathic mutual healing group experiment. End quote. Quote, on November 23rd, I received the lesson for the experiment and learned part of the ritual. Next day, I learned it all. In the morning of the 25th, I suddenly discovered that the terrific pain had completely disappeared. Either the treatment or just studying the instructions cleared away the pain. I am wondering. End quote. And then it says in brackets, note, undoubtedly she made contact with her high self in practicing and got a swift answer. Close bracket. Quote, I saw a double circle like a ring, running with liquid, brilliant green fire. Right in the middle shone like a diamond, a glitter of every color. End quote. Quote, I had such difficulty in my breathing when I walked, if only a short distance, and I would have to sit down to get my breath. Yesterday I walked 2 blocks and had no difficulty. I have not been able to do that for months, so you see how happy I am. End quote. Quote, the growth has disappeared entirely. Greatly puzzles the doctors. End quote. One of the surprising features of the experiment is the emergence of the feeling that, united in this way through the telepathic contacts and making a united contact with the Po Amakua, we become a group entity. We are braided together like our aka threads and seem to share the kind of unity or oneness known to our high selves. We find ourselves united into a body and sensing love and nearness and companionship. After this experience, which a number of us have felt vividly, we have come to know the inner meaning of the church or congregation as a mechanism to be used in contacting and in working with the high selves, being guided, helped, and healed, and in turn being given service to perform on our levels of life at the behest of those higher selves. As has been said, so satisfactory was the first test of the methods that we immediately continued into a second period and then made this part of the work a regular rite at 3 and 7 daily. 7 days a week without break. As time went on, a prayer ritual was asked for and sent by means of the bulletin. It was suggested that it should be changed to suit the needs of the user and then be memorized for use. The thoughts contained in the prayer have a very great impressive force on the low self, a physical stimulus of a high order. After accumulating a surcharge of mana on the hour, the prayer begins, quote, I reach out now to contact MFL at the center and to become part of the group now assembling for prayer. With the group, I now reach out to contact the great company of Omakuas, which includes my own. Pause. Beloved and utterly trustworthy parental spirits, cleanse me of all sins of hurts done others. Accept my pledge to refrain from hurts and to make amends for past hurts insofar as possible. Cleanse thou my soiled face with the abundance of thy grace. Cleanse this supply of living force that I offer as my living sacrifice to you. I now send through the Aka cord of contact and through the braided cord of the group, through MFL at the center, this supply of mana. Accept it with my love and joyous giving. I now send the mental picture of conditions which I ask to be used as molds or seeds and filled and grown to realities in the future. I see a world at peace, a prosperous world, a happy world, a safe world. I now present this picture of all our group being brought into the light and standing in perfect health, with a bountiful supply of all things needed for happy living and service. I see all of us, including myself, given the power to serve, the means of service, and the joy of service. I pledge myself to accept all opportunities for service with faith and to the limit of my ability, that from small things I may grow into greater things of service and daily become more like you are, more utterly trustworthy in the use I make of the things entrusted to me. I will strive to do my part, to become as I picture myself in the future, healthy, happy, and prosperous, filled with the joy of life and service, become utterly trustworthy in every thought and act and aspiration. I now present a special mental picture of conditions desired for myself. In brackets, here visualize the desired personal conditions or conditions desired for others. Close brackets. The prayer now finishes. The mental images are released into your keeping to be materialized as soon as possible. Beloved and utterly trustworthy parental spirits, great Po Amakua, now let the return of mana flow as blessed rain to all good and all cleansing. No, to bring all good and all cleansing. The prayer action is finished. I withdraw from contact. Ma. Amen. When we entered the war in Korea, I received many letters from anxious wives, parents, and sweethearts of the men in the armed forces. They asked for help. So we inserted a paragraph in the prayer ritual, building a wall of protection Around the soldiers whose names had been sent in, we placed a special prayer immediately after the mental picture of a world at peace. It was worded thus: I now present a picture of all the men linked with the group who are in the armed services. Each is surrounded with a wall of protection made strong by our high selves at all times and constantly protecting them from danger in every way. It is a fact, at this time of writing, not a single man on the wall of protection has been reported as a casualty. Many have come through actions where others were killed or injured. One survived unscathed, a plane crash, in which a number of others were killed or hurt. But such a fortunate result of prayer actions was by no means universal. Though through the years, while the TMHG was in operation, letter after letter came in repeating results nearly miraculous. Others reported slight results, and sometimes a complete lack of benefit. Much seemed to depend on the individual seeking aid through the group with the work. Seeking aid through work with the group. The sending of the mana faithfully, day by day, to the high selves and the careful regular presentation of pictures of the conditions desired proved to have a building or cumulative effect. Also, the ability of one person to help another, something on the line of priming a pump with water to enable another to pump for himself, seems to be necessary in some cases. One low self with faith and full confidence seems to be able to help the low self of another greatly. For small groups, the ideal way to work together seems to be through the weekly contact meeting, with regular projects and with prayer actions of the Huna type used in unison. The ritual just given is a very serviceable one and covers all the important points. Then, during the week, with some member of the group acting as a center, the work on the hour once or twice a day can be undertaken, just as in the TMHG, and the strength multiplied by the association in all ways. For those who wish to serve with absent treatment, the knowledge obtained by the TMHG in its experimental work with Huna can serve as a guide in theory as well as in practical application. The following report on a telepathic communication between two persons with the object of healing appears in one of the bulletins. A successful telepathic healing experiment with special research into the use of water as an adjunct to the telepathic reception was carried out in May and June by HRA TAI. Huna Research Associate TAI. His home being in Los Angeles, and HRH Mrs. JMR, she being a resident of Madison, Wisconsin. The latter is gifted along psychic lines, accustomed to healing work, and given to feeling a downward flow of high mana as a sparkling shower when contacting her Amakua. TAL had demonstrated some psychic ability and had used the Kahuna method of gazing into a tumbler of water as into a gazing crystal to get visual images in answer to telepathic or other projections. The date set for the test was May 23rd, 1952, at 7 a.m. California Daylight Saving Time. Mrs. R. wrote to TAL, "I should like to send you a healing radiation while the current is strong. Of course, I may not be able to call forth a strong radiation at the appointed time, but perhaps the high self will help. We might begin at 7 and continue for 9 minutes. You might even get a spoken message." The experiment was carried out on schedule, and here is a part of the letter of TAL to Mrs. R. reporting on its reception. Quote, "Promptly at 7 a.m., I was ready, having prepared myself mentally for the message, and with the vessel filled with water. I sat passive and glanced into the vessel, awaiting the appearance of any sense of arrival of any message. There seemed an absolute void. Then, at 7:03, a scene appeared in the vessel of a lady with gray hair, light eyes, medium stature, clad in a dark jacket or maybe a vest, because the sleeves were of a light color and showed prominently, as her arms were outstretched upward in prayer supplication." In brackets it says here, "Note, the two persons making this experiment had never met." Close bracket. She walked as though from one room to another, paused in the second room at a table, lowered her head, and gazed in deep meditation. And at the same time, I became conscious of a pulsating vibration aroused in my stomach. It lasted a full minute, and within me surged the thought of release from tensions. I became very much relaxed and yawned. I could even see her lips move, as if making a spoken statement, but could not sense the words. After a few minutes, the action ended. It has been my daily obligation to have at hand some milk to alleviate the distress caused by my stomach condition. On my way to work, I was in high spirits, and I had a strong feeling of well-being and promise of its continuance because of the healing vibration which I had felt. All day Friday, there was no necessity to drink milk, nor was I disturbed in any way that day, as I have usually been when tight situations develop. Since then, my stomach has been quite normal, and I have been able to eat and enjoy foods that heretofore had been taboo for me." End quote. Mrs. R., in reply, after expressing her pleasure and her gratitude to the high beings for the healing, went on to give her check of the telepathic image seen in the water. "Your picture in the water was so true that it amazes me. Just as you described it, I walked from one room to another twice while taking deep breaths and sending them to the top of my head, as explained in The Secret Science Behind Miracles, to contact the high self. Then I stood beside a low table and prayed, with my head bowed, next raising my arms, the right hand palm down and the left hand palm upward. I felt waves of gentle radiation, and I knew that you were receiving a healing. Then I asked that the healing be sustained, and after the healing current was sent, I endeavored to send the message, 'Accept thy healing.'" Apparently, the high self, yours, ended the picture at this point. However, I continued with the activity by pretending I was you and walked around the room forgetting me while I was you in California. I walked briskly, sensing vigor, feeling well-being, and complete release in health. I sometimes use this activity when sending healing and find that it works. I spoke aloud and I said, while I was you, I am strong and I am healed. Then I was back here giving thanks to the universal healer of all that exists. Then I went about my usual duties. Your description of the dark jacket with light sleeves showing was right. I was wearing a dark house coat, and there were light sleeves showing below the dark sleeves of the coat. And that concludes chapter 12. My goodness. Wasn't that interesting? Oh, wow. And chapter 13 is entitled Contacts Made Through Signatures, also signature auras and measurements. Well, I can't imagine how that works. I hope you'll join me there. So till soon.